Double or Nothing on Sunday. As of now, Cage Match has this show listed at a 9.71 rating, which if this holds up, makes it the third highest rated show in history, behind the Brody Lee tribute in 2020 and the Hana Kimura Memorial Show in 2021. So this is the third biggest show of all time. And leading the way is the Konosuke Takeshita Kazuchika Okada match that has a 9.53 rating. MJF and Darby Allin is at 9.0. So what stock you do put in to Cage Match ratings, that's based off of 310 votes for the event itself. And I mean, generally, I don't think our opinions differed from too many people's coming out of Sunday. This was regarded as, at worst, among the best shows in AEW history, and some believing it was the best show in AEW history. Like, it just feels like this was a massive win for the company. And I think it's one that, as well, like business-wise, I think it's going to be a big one for the company. I'm very intrigued by this number and seeing what this stipulation and show was able to pull, because it was promoted really well, and obviously the show delivered and then some.
And it maintains just this incredible run of AEW pay-per-views and the standard that they've set. So I would say this one certainly elevated the bar, and I think going forward, expectations for shows of this caliber are going to be that much higher, especially for All In. I mean, the next one is Forbidden Door. That's going to be massive too.
In 4 weeks.
Yeah, so expectations are certainly going to be high for that one. Whatever they got going on in July, and of course All In really being the big one. So from this stretch from now until All In, it could be really, really strong for AEW, picking up a whole lot of momentum.
Yeah, so the press conference afterward, there was a bit of a delay, and when they finally got this underway, they had Will Ospreay, who, I mean, the main takeaways from him were, I mean, he was given a bunch of like in-character questions and just kind of rolled with it. But I mean, he mentioned the fact that he was, and this is not, he has disclosed this before, but he was so influenced by this Joe Daniels Styles match at TNA Unbreakable in like 21 years ago, that is what propelled him to want to become a wrestler. And this was the last member of that match that he had never faced. So obviously this was a very big deal for Ospreay. And I don't know if Will Ospreay has WrestleTix on his phone, but this promo he gave at the end of this about going to Wembley in the biggest match of my life. I believe I am the greatest wrestler on the planet, and I can lead this company. I mean, he cut, like, I listened to this. I was like, this should be the promo in late August before Wembley. We don't need to, maybe he was just doing like, a dry run of his go home promo, because this was outstanding. This message he gave at the end of the press conference.
I don't think we've heard enough from Will Ospreay talking specifically about Wembley. I mean, I understand we're still pretty far away from it. He hasn't even earned his title shot yet. But if it is important to drive ticket sales at this particular moment, at a time when people have to make their plans to travel, if they could find more ways to get Ospreay talking specifically about main eventing All In without explicitly basically stating that he is main eventing All In, I think that'd be really helpful. What they did with him on like the collision portion of AEW Dynamite, that 3-hour show, was good, but it was also on a part of the show that unfortunately didn't retain too many viewers. So it's all the more important to hear him speak, because he's a tremendous speaker, of course.
Let me ask you this. So this proposed July pay-per-view that everyone is expecting, I was somewhat surprised they didn't announce it on Sunday, but let's say it's about 4 weeks or so out from All In rather.
Yep.
On the one hand, like, I think you want to have like a meaningful title match, so that this pay-per-view doesn't just feel like it's a lame duck pay-per-view. It's, as Tony Khan said on the press conference last week, about it's got to have substance. But on the other hand, do you want to wait that long to know for sure what your main event is for Wembley when it's like 4 weeks out? And I think that's what you're balancing here. And now that Double or Nothing is over, like All In is, all your efforts should be on this show. Like, it is, you really need to move a lot of tickets for this show to make it look respectable. And 23,000, like, that's a great number. If they had booked the O2 and they sold out by this point, this would be boom. But in a stadium that can hold 90 and you've got 23, like, no one's expecting them to get this like two-thirds full. But I think 40 is your expectation level. So that's a long preamble. But what are your thoughts on this July pay-per-view and when you solidify this match?
I think it's a really good question. I mean, ultimately, I think, for the type of fan that might be looking towards getting a ticket for All In at this point, they're probably considering whether or not Kenny Omega versus Will Ospreay is going to be the match that they'll be paying for. And to dangle that possibility or to confirm that possibility as soon as you can, I think makes a lot of sense. And that would mean doing MJF versus Kenny Omega as soon as Forbidden Door, unless barring some sort of TV special. But I mean that feels definitely like a pay-per-view match. Of course, the alternative is whatever rumor this is for this July show being a Canadian show, which would make a bit more sense to perhaps have Kenny going for the championship there. But it also doesn't mean that you can't. Ultimately, it depends on what they are actually booking, because like the alternative of an MJF versus Will Ospreay, I think at this point feels still plenty attractive. Now, is it the type of traveling match? Is it the type of match that'll make people like buy a flight and book your hotel? Could be with the right build, but Omega versus Ospreay is the type of match that on paper might be already enough for a lot of people to make those travel plans. So. Speaking as a Canadian, I would love for Kenny Omega to win his championship in Canada, but I feel like it's more important to have that match as soon as possible and have that main event confirmed as soon as possible. So I would do it at Forbidden Door.
I feel the same way. I feel at the end of Forbidden Door, and then you've got all summer to at least promote your title match. And the hope is you certainly have the roster. It's having the hook for that July pay-per-view to, they can... I don't think it's a case where it's just a given that it becomes a throwaway show. It's just, I do think it's important to have this title match. I was thinking about this today, and I feel like that would be a good time. And then you've got like 8 weeks of like hard build for this. Like it's not you're not promoting a dream match. It's a rematch, but it's also kind of like a wink and a nod that this is probably the last time you could get this match with Ospreay and Omega and going for the title.
It feels different on that stage, though.
Oh, certainly. Yes. Yeah, for sure. Tony Khan, there were several stories that came up here. He was asked, Kimmy Sokol at Fightful asked about like the commission restrictions. And while he didn't get to any specifics, he said they kept the commission happy in New York. And we did get the note from the Bucks that everything was live for that Stadium Stampede, including that Jack Perry bus crash that... These fans shot it, and I wanted to hear these guys on alternate commentary because their reactions were amazing to watching this bus like behind their like bleachers as they saw this happen in real time.
Yeah, because this is, I mean, normally I guess an open air stadium that they just happen, like, which explains why it was so cold up there. You could, if you're sitting at the very top, basically turn around to see the outside of the building where they performed this stunt live, which is incredible. Absolutely.
If there was any scene in that Stadium Stampede you would have assumed was taped, that was the one. And no, they did it live.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I wanted to play this one clip because someone asked him about the differentiation between AEW and ROH. I wanted to get your thoughts on it.
It is a place where not only we have a lot of the best veteran wrestlers, but also a lot of really impressive young wrestlers, including a lot of young women. And there are a lot of women's matches in ROH and a lot of focus on developing women's wrestling. And I also don't have the same pressures of TV time, commercial breaks, and all these things. And it's a great place to bring people in. I also think there's a focus on pure wrestling. On the last pay-per-view, 3 of the matches were pure wrestling matches. I try to make it a balance between the wrestlers in ROH now, but also having a lot of the classic ROH wrestlers and that from before I owned the company. So trying to utilize some of the history of ROH, trying to mix the veterans, the young wrestlers, a lot of pure wrestling, and emphasis on a lot of the young wrestlers and their development, and also trying to put the pedal to the metal and put on as much women's wrestling as I can on that show. Thank you for asking. It is a place where not only we have...
there we go. Bit of a Kazar reference there. Some pedal to the metal.
Kazar?
You remember him?
No.
Early 2000s. It was
Kazar. Oh, okay. Some musician. People have been saying that before Kazar. I want to assure you.
Okay, well, but he popularized it. And if you were edgeless at the time. So I was more so interested in his positioning there of like, obviously, I think he is very aware of the female representation on the AEW shows itself and making ROH. It's such a different, it's just such a different presentation in ROH where women's matches are plentiful in comparison. And it is interesting just looking at, his answer there of, what is necessarily holding him back from that. And people have their theories, but ROH is one where he does not have a broadcast partner. He's not limited by, if he's going based on like ratings performances, that's less of a factor in ROH. He doesn't exactly spell it out, but it was just interesting to hear him almost kind of acknowledge that, this is where we feature a lot of our women to the people that, it's a valid complaint that people bring up with AEW itself.
Yeah, I suppose so. I listened to an answer like that, and it just sounds like a bunch of rambling. From like what I ultimately get from him is that he does not have a focus for Ring of Honor. He can explain what Ring of Honor currently is, and honestly, it feels more like it's just a catch-all for things he can't put on Dynamite. I hate to call it this, but it feels like, if you're going to promote it as, a place that's for there, where you can have more pure wrestling or more women's wrestling, or I don't know why it's important for this, but like Ring of Honor stars from the past, like I don't think anybody cares, like how much original Ring of Honor content, like having
what if it was Rhett Titus?
Yeah, I don't think anybody gives a shit about that. So I don't know why he might feel it's important to have like.
Well, how about this? When you say hands tied, why do you feel his hands are tied? Of like, what do you think the factors are as it applies to AEW?
His hands are tied in what about women's wrestling in particular?
For instance, like I don't
think his hands are tied.
Okay, well that's like there.
Yeah, I think he has a lot of talent, and maybe there's some desire to like want to develop those talents under his own umbrella. But I think ultimately to make Ring of Honor at least somewhat attractive, you need to give it a better identity, and he has not managed to do that. And it doesn't seem like he has any intent to, Like what exactly are people signing up for? Like how are you advertising and selling Ring of Honor to somebody who might not be interested? Correct.
Like I think that like the selling feature is more wrestling, and I think that's a tough sell for some people. Like it's there, you're gonna enjoy these like especially their pay-per-views. Their pay-per-views are very good.
More wrestling, honestly. Like in the way he's saying it, it's more pure wrestling. What exactly does that mean? Are we
the pure wrestling like division,
the championship? Yeah. Okay, so what rope breaks? Like that's why I would want to sign up for this thing. What are we getting that's on Dynamite and Collision that's not considered pure wrestling? Well, other than just specifically the branding of pure wrestling under the pure rules.
Haven't you ever thought, like, I wish they could only get 3 rope breaks and no closed fists? No.
Like, it doesn't sound like he's got it like a real concise idea of how he wants to sell Ring of Honor. And if he does, based off of like, if he's just trying to sell Ring of Honor based off that particular explanation, I would say it's a terrible marketing strategy because it doesn't sound attractive.
Okay, well, maybe he'll introduce impure wrestling in AEW.
Sure.
If the Post Wrestling Cafe were to undergo a drug test in the month of May, we would be testing positive because we are overloaded with content. We are going to be reviewing Hulk Hogan, Real American, all 4 episodes this month. Plus, we will go inside the Manosphere with a review of the latest Louis Theroux documentary. We will also have coverage of the Ronda Rousey-Gina Carano fight, also taking place on Netflix. Rewind Away tackles WCW Super Brawl 2, and we cover NXT TakeOver Brooklyn from 2015. All that, plus all of the XL editions on a weekly basis, Collision Course, Daredevil Born Again, and so much more. It can all be yours at postwrestlingcafe.com. $8 gets you in the door. Also brought up, our own John Kleinchester did ask about MyAEW, and after the One Fall Wrestling deal and for the streaming service, it seems like they are going to be going after other groups to populate MyAEW. This is not just some one-off, and I don't think anyone looked at that as like this is going to be the only company you see on here. And it brings up an interesting question of like, what resources are you putting into MyAEW? I'm very interested in a company like a WXW that has a following that have basically stopped using Triller because they have not been paid and they haven't heard from them. So they're just going to like, they're just not working with Triller. And like, to me, like that's a level above a One Fall Wrestling. And, you know, these companies like, it's not like a lot of these independent companies are going to have a lot of great options elsewhere because, you know, Triller is, you know, it's in shambles at this time. But what kind of money is MyAEW offering? Like, I imagine a One Fall Wrestling, like that would sound like a very modest deal because I can't imagine anyone outside of friends and family that are signing up specifically for One Fall Wrestling. But it's a nice add-on if you're a subscriber and you're just being given more wrestling. That should be the tagline for all these companies.
To me, it just feels more like a guinea pig to see if, you know, there's really any interest in like extra content or maybe just like a way to fill, you know, more of this 24/7 channel that they've got going on. But I mean, I kind of said this, you know, on Friday, but WWE tried this with WWE Network, and you know, a progress on WWE Network really I don't think is meaningful at all for that particular audience. But for an AEW audience who might have a bit more interest in what's going on in the indies, in particular, maybe AEW stars wrestling on the indies, AEW attachments to, you know, like your larger indies like Defy or something like that, I do think maybe it would represent some added value, you know. So and more importantly, I think for a lot of indies, they probably want that attachment to the AEW, I guess, you know, world, and to have a platform that, you know, is a direct sort of line to the type of hardcore audience that they want to attract.
Other topics covered was, you know, Tony Khan was, as you know, giving a wink towards this idea of running a big event next April when WrestleMania is in Saudi Arabia. Basically just saying, like, he was asked, like, there's no big event next April in the US. And Tony Khan was like, not yet. And so it seems like that is, you know, it's obviously a huge undertaking if you are AEW, but it really sounds like this is one where they take their swing and try this. But I think it's not as big as running Wembley, but I think domestically, this is like their biggest undertaking of something, even if it's an arena that they book. And I wonder if they would think of just an arena versus stadium for a city. And if people will travel for an AEW weekend, but you know, there is an opportunity certainly, but it's one that comes with like, it's just a big task to undertake.
What scale of event would feel appropriate for something like this? Because would you argue that it has to be bigger than your typical hockey arena type of show? Like 14, like does it have to be more than 14,000?
I don't think it has to necessarily. Well,
are you acquiring, like, is the idea to provide a weekend for your, you know, collectives and, like, you know, wrap around sort of like community?
I think so. I don't think they're looking at this as just us drawing a show. I think that it's getting
is a 14,000 seater enough to bring that level of tourism.
It might not. Like, if you want travelers, like you want to, like, you book a stadium, you're telling your audience this is a huge deal. It's a big event, and it becomes this cause for wrestling fans that, hey, WWE is taking away your big traveling show of the year, and we are the good guys coming to town and putting the independent business on our back for their most lucrative week of the year that would be lost if not for us running this show. And you push it as this, like, this cause for professional wrestling, for non-WWE wrestling.
So again, would they have to book a bigger arena than a typical?
I feel they would. But it comes with, like, how many AEW shows could fill a stadium? And maybe filling it is not going to be the end result, but, like, can you sell 30,000 tickets to a show? Could last night's show have sold 30,000 tickets? I don't think it would have hit 30. I think they could have hit like 18 to 20, but 30 is another, you know, that's a big scale up for AEW. But you certainly read between the lines there that it seems like that is a very real possibility for next year.
And where would you place it in the vicinity of a WrestleMania that is going to be a juggernaut to compete with, especially if you're trying to do a pay-per-view? There's no possible way you could do it on the same weekend. How close?
No, I would not do it on the weekend. I mean, I do it in the vicinity. Like, we don't even have the dates, do we, yet for that Saudi WrestleMania? I think they've only promoted like the month. I think you could do it within several weeks of it. It's not like people are traveling to both. But yeah, the idea of running it that weekend to me is a horrible idea.
Yeah,
a horrible idea.
I would love to see it simply to see what, if any, countermeasures WWE may possibly take.
Oh, it would be like it becomes a really interesting game because you are going against WWE, and like that's fine if you're AEW, but it's all these other companies and it's cities, and it's like WWE has a lot of sway and influence. And I know everyone loves the idea of running New Orleans, but it's like, dude, New Orleans is in this for a WrestleMania, and they might not be incentivized to just open up put out the red carpet for a competing event. Have they ever done a big show in Chicago? What about Chicago?
What do they have? What was the last one? What's the next one? What's the next Chicago show?
I don't think they have a next one announced. Okay. So,
and how far are we from the last Chicago pay-per-view?
All Out? I can't remember.
All Out. Anyway. Okay.
Spoke a bit about David Ellison. Very, very, just praised David Ellison. Said he's a wrestling fan. I'd love to know more about David Ellison's wrestling fandom as well. Apparently, cops were contacted after the Jack Perry spot.
I mean, you see that bus crash. I would imagine somebody might have been concerned. Yeah.
And also at the press conference, Gerard Brown from the NWA podcast, and he asked about AEW. They're doing back-to-back nights in Detroit at the end of July, and this is 9 days after WWE is running in the same city. But Tony Khan just said, hey, there was for the last few years, we don't pay attention to other companies. We just focus on what we're doing and what our partner promotions are doing. So very, very, very political answer from Tony Khan. Very politically safe.
I also think, though, it is in line with maybe the change in philosophy he's demonstrated as a public persona over the recent years, like not responding necessarily to shots from the competition, but instead focusing on just making your product as good as possible.
All right, let's. And he also said QT Marshall should be okay after the big fall. QT did post that his next feud is going to be with Vita Coco Water.
Ooh,
yeah, so wow. Shots fired.
I think we should also mention, really much of the fallout coming off of this particular show, besides how great it is, has been just the logistical nightmare of getting in and in particular out of the building. It sounded like everybody had a really hell of a time trying to get.
It sounded like like you could see at the beginning of the show, like this stadium was about half full, if that, and like I heard from many people that it took them like 40 to 50 minutes, and a lot of people didn't get in until right as the buy-in was ending. And this was one of those buy-ins that it was actually pretty newsworthy. Like, imagine you just getting in and you walk in and see Mick Foley and MJF in a promo battle. But yeah, getting out, it just sounds like it was a total mess, and there were videos popping up. It was a total logistical nightmare for many people. I mean, there were some that escaped doom, but many that just were either stuck there for a long period of time, or for those that were able to secure an Uber, like paid through the ass to get home. It was just and I don't know. I don't know this area at all. Like, yes, they host these tennis they host all of these like tennis matches and such. I don't know if they get the surge of people all coming at the same time or getting out. Like, you would think like this is just a routine practice for any kind of major facility, but this was for all the good that the show provided quality wise. Yeah, the logistical side seemed like it was the polar opposite.
I do want to read one piece of feedback we received after the fact from one of our listeners, Brian, who drove up from Philadelphia last night to the show, and overall it was the best AEW show I've ever been to, probably in the top 5 best AEW shows of all time. Just to piggyback on some of the complaints, the line getting in the arena was massive. I was in line for 40 minutes before I got in with about 2 minutes till the main show. By the time I got to my seat, hundreds and hundreds of people behind me in the line. They had a retractable roof closed, but after getting stuck in the rain while in line, it was definitely cold inside, especially as the night went on. I could see my breath at some points and remember seeing Techless breath on the big screen, so it must have been chilly for the performers as well. Even with all this, the crowd was loud all night and there wasn't a bad seat in the house. I was in the upper level and there were only 2 exits for the thousands of people waiting to leave the concourse. When we finally got out and walked to the boardwalk area that stretched to the street/subway, a few thousand of us realized they locked the gate at the end of the boardwalk for some reason, so we all had to turn around and walk a couple miles through a nearby park and around the arena to get to the street. I read that eventually they came and opened the gate for everyone trapped on the boardwalk, but it was definitely dicey. On the plus side, I eventually walked past the Jurassic Express and the car that Jack Perry totaled on the side of the stadium. Good experience. It was an experience, but for a show that good, it definitely was worth it. So bring a jacket, he says, next time.
Jack Perry could have made a killing if the bus was in working order. He could have just been...
That's right. I probably would have thought twice about that spot.
Those surging rates, he could have made a killing. Could have taken the rest of the year off.